All right, information control. Presidents have a number of ways of using information to influence public opinion. One way that a president can control information is by withholding it. While presidents can release pretty much anything they want, they're the terminus point in the classification process. So by definition, they can declassify at will. They can also hide information and use classification cynically. Civil libertarians have long argued that both Republican and Democratic administrations have relied on classification to hide embarrassing facts from the public under the cloak of national security. An example was George W. Bush's Executive Order 13233, which restricted access to the records of former presidents to a much higher degree than previously. And there were lots of questions about why he was doing that, maybe to protect his father. Another way that presidents can redirect or restrict information is simply not to provide it. The text authors note that another example of George W. Bush's presidency was when Thomas Scully, who is the presidentially appointed administration of the agency overseeing Medicare, ordered the Medicare program's chief actuary not to provide to Congress the most recent estimates of the cost of the bill while Congress considered the Medicaid Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act. Both the Bush II and the Trump administrations have similarly ordered the Environmental Protection Agency not to release studies on climate change that they viewed as kind of contradicting their policies. At times, the administration will recognize that it has to release information, but will time the release in such a way as to minimize its impact. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, or I wrote about it, the problem of dump days, which is when an administration will release embarrassing or controversial information at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday, knowing that most Americans don't watch news on Friday evenings. Frequently, that gives you 2 whole days of a news cycle to try and kind of live it down. Frequently, an administration will try to release bad news when they know they have good news that will overshadow the bad news. And sometimes they'll time the release of bad news until after a critical juncture has passed. An example of that listed in the text is when the Ford administration waited until after the 1974 midterms had passed before they were announcing that the economy was in recession. Another way of dealing with the inevitable release of bad news is obfuscation, which involves the use of obscure language or distortions of facts to mislead the public. One of the most embarrassing moments for Bill Clinton during his campaign for president in 1992 was that as governor of Arkansas, he really had not been confronted with the "have you ever smoked marijuana" question, which had become a big deal when one of Reagan's Supreme Court nominees got outed for smoking marijuana with his Harvard Law School students. When he was asked that question, his response, experimented with it when I was in England, I didn't inhale, I didn't like it, and I never tried it again, appeared to be so transparently false that it caused again a mini controversy that his campaign struggled with. Administrations will often rely on more extensive distortions of truth by providing lots of statistics that seemingly support their policies. But one of the things I learned in graduate school is that statistics are tools, not truths, and they can be deployed disingenuously, as when the George W. Bush administration did when they claimed that that statistics proved that 92 million Americans would receive an average tax cut of $1,083. That sounds like a lot of money. But what they were hiding was that around 50 million Americans wouldn't get any tax relief at all, and about half of the remaining Americans would get less than $100, skewing the benefit to, basically about 5 or 6% of high income earners. And that demonstrates the truism that when you, walk into that you happen to be in a bar and Bill Gates walks in, the median income of everyone in the bar will jump by millions of dollars. But no one's standard of living is actually going to be dramatically improved. The authors note that the most extreme form of information control is lying. One of the early instances of a president being caught lying was in 1960, when Dwight Eisenhower basically got caught saying, no, we're not flying over Russian airspace to keep track of Soviet nuclear and military capabilities, when in fact we were. And when the U-2 spy incident happened, when Gary Powers was shot down over Russia, it was an extreme embarrassment for Dwight Eisenhower. The text also notes that the Bush administration's made an extremely lawyerly case for invading and occupying Iraq, alleging that the regime of Saddam Hussein had access to weapons of mass destruction, and had attempted to restart their nuclear program, and that they were potentially could give nuclear weapons to terrorists. Several administration officials, including George W. Bush and his national security advisor Condoleezza Rice, used the same formulation. We don't want the smoking gun to come in the form of a mushroom cloud. Without any real evidence that the Hussein regime would have ever given any terrorist group nuclear technology. I think it's pretty clear that they wouldn't have. With this administration, dishonesty appears to have reached a new crescendo. One clear example that I can point out is Trump's statement on Air Force One that he knew nothing of payments that had made to that had been made to the porn star Stormy Daniels. A statement that appears to have been directly refuted by Michael Cohen, who made the payments, and of which there are tapes appearing to confirm that he knew about the payments. So is the genie out of the bottle? Once public figures get the sense that they can lie with impunity, is there anything really to stop them? Something to think about.